I walked into my parents' house that Sunday evening, expecting a normal family dinner. The smell of pot roast filled the air, and I could hear voices in the dining room. My brother Derek was there with his fiancée Stephanie. The moment I stepped through the doorway, Derek looked up from his wine glass and said the words that would shatter everything. He announced coldly that I was not invited to his wedding. When I asked why, he sneered at me. "Because you're just a garbage collector on airplanes, Joan. Stephanie's family is prestigious. We can't have you embarrassing us." My hands went numb. I stood there in the doorway, my purse still hanging from my shoulder, unable to process what I had just heard. The dining room suddenly felt too small, too hot. My mother was setting down a serving dish of roasted vegetables. My father sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses perched on his nose, suddenly very interested in his napkin. "Derek, what are you talking about?" I managed to say, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the back of Stephanie's seat. She sat beside him in a cream-colored cashmere sweater, her engagement ring catching the light from the chandelier. She was looking at me with something between pity and disdain. "I'm talking about reality, Joan," Derek said. He took a slow sip of his wine. "You pick up trash on airplanes. You wear that little uniform and ask people if they want coffee. That's fine for you, I guess. But Stephanie and I are building a life with a certain standard." I felt my face flush hot. "I work as a flight attendant. It's honest work. I make a decent living." "Oh, come on," Stephanie chimed in, her voice honeyed with false sympathy. "Let's be real here. My bridesmaids are all lawyers, doctors, corporate executives. We can't have the groom's sister serving drinks at 30,000 feet. What would people think?" I looked at my parents, waiting for them to defend me, waiting for them to tell Derek he was being cruel and unreasonable. My mother fussed with the tablecloth. My father cleared his throat. "Dad," I said, my voice breaking slightly, "are you hearing this?" He finally looked up at me. His eyes, the same hazel as mine, couldn't quite meet my gaze. "Joan, sweetheart, maybe Derek has a point. The Harrisons are a very prominent family. Stephanie's father owns half the commercial real estate in the tri-state area. This wedding is going to be in all the society pages." My mouth fell open. "So what? I'm your daughter. And Derek is our son," my mother said quietly, finally sitting down. "This is his special day. Maybe it would be easier for everyone if you just respected his wishes." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Respected his wishes? He's telling me I'm not good enough to attend his wedding because of my job. Derek rolled his eyes dramatically. "Don't make this about you. This is my day, Joan. Mine and Stephanie's. You always have to make everything so dramatic." I tried one more time. "I work hard. I pay my bills. I have my own apartment. What more do you want from me?" "We don't want anything from you," Stephanie said, examining her manicured nails. "That's kind of the point. You don't have anything to offer this wedding except potential embarrassment." Derek already sent out 175 invitations. "Everyone got one except you." The words hit me like ice water. "You already sent out invitations? How long have you been planning this?" Derek shrugged. 6 weeks. We finalized the guest list back in October. It was now December. They had known for 6 weeks that they were excluding me, and no one had said a word. I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to be my family. My brother, who I had grown up with, who I had defended on the playground, who I had helped with homework. My parents, who had raised me, who had told me they would always love me no matter what. "This is unbelievable," I whispered. "What's unbelievable," Derek said, standing up now, his voice rising, "is that you think you have a right to insert yourself into an event where you don't belong. My wedding is going to be perfect. 200 guests. A 5-course dinner. A live band. I've worked too hard for this to have you there, in your little economy class mindset, probably wearing some cheap dress from a department store, embarrassing me in front of Stephanie's family." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. "Fine," I said, my voice steady now. "If that's how you feel." I turned to leave, but Derek's voice stopped me. "Oh, and Joan, don't bother showing up to any other family events either. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable around your betters." I walked out. I made it to my car. I drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. 3 days later, I was lying on my couch, still replaying that dinner in my head, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin Rachel. Just a photo with the caption, "Looks amazing!" I opened the image. It was a picture from inside an upscale country club, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a golf course. There were maybe 150 people dressed in cocktail attire, champagne glasses in hand. In the center of the photo, Derek and Stephanie stood together, her hand on his chest, both of them laughing. I scrolled through my messages. Nothing from Derek about a party. Nothing from my parents. I called Rachel. "Hey," I said when she answered. "What is this?" "The engagement party," she said, sounding confused. "It's beautiful. The Harrisons really went all out. Are you not here? I thought I just hadn't seen you yet." "I wasn't invited." There was a long pause. "Joan, I'm so sorry. I assumed you knew about it. Everyone from the family is here. Everyone but me." I felt something crack inside my chest. "Thanks for telling me, Rachel." I hung up. I sat there on my couch, looking at that photo. They had planned an engagement party, invited the entire extended family, and deliberately excluded me. This wasn't a spontaneous thing. This had been planned for weeks. Something in me shifted. I had been willing to accept the wedding exclusion, as painful as it was, as some kind of twisted misunderstanding. But this was intentional cruelty. This was a pattern. I got up, got dressed in my best outfit, a navy blue wrap dress and heels, and I drove 2 hours to that country club. I told myself I would be mature. I would pull Derek aside, tell him how much this hurt, and try to mend things. I would prove I could fit in, that I wasn't an embarrassment. I walked into the country club through the main entrance. The party was in the grand ballroom. I could hear music and laughter. I pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The room was beautiful. Round tables with white linens and tall centerpieces of white roses, string lights hanging from the ceiling, a bar in the corner with a bartender in a bow tie. I scanned the crowd for Derek. I found him. He was standing near the microphone at the front of the room, talking to someone I didn't recognize. The moment his eyes landed on me, his expression changed from pleasant to furious in half a second. He didn't walk over to me. He didn't pull me aside discreetly. Instead, he walked directly to the microphone, tapped it twice, and the music stopped. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, his voice booming through the speakers. "Can I have your attention for just one moment?" The room went quiet. 150 faces turned toward him, then followed his gaze to where I stood near the entrance. "I want to introduce you all to someone," Derek continued, a smile plastered on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "This is my sister Joan. She wasn't invited to this party, but she decided to come anyway." "Why wasn't she invited, you might ask?" "Well, Joan collects passenger garbage for a living. She picks up people's trash on airplanes. Let's all give her a round of applause for crashing our celebration." I stood frozen, as awkward laughter rippled through the crowd. Some people weren't laughing, they looked uncomfortable. But others were actually clapping. I saw phones come out, multiple phones. People were recording this. Stephanie stood next to Derek, her hand over her mouth, but she was smiling. My parents sat at a table near the front. My mother's face was red, but she didn't stand up. She didn't defend me. My father was looking down at his plate. I turned and walked out, my heels clicking on the marble floor, each step echoing in my ears. Behind me, the music started up again, and the party continued as if nothing had happened. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I called in sick to work, which I never did. I lay in my apartment, curtains drawn, watching those videos circulate on social media. Someone had posted it to their Instagram story. Someone else had put it on TikTok. By the next morning, it had been shared in 3 different family group chats. People I hadn't spoken to in years were seeing me humiliated. On Wednesday morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I got in my car and drove to my parents' house. I didn't call first. I just showed up. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. I knew they would be home. My father had retired last year from his accounting firm, and my mother only worked part-time now at the library. I parked in their driveway behind my father's sedan and walked up to the front door. I didn't knock. I used my key, the same key I had had since high school. They were in the kitchen. Coffee was brewing. My mother was reading something on her tablet. My father was doing the crossword puzzle from the newspaper. They both looked up when I walked in, and I saw surprise flicker across their faces. "Joan," my mother said, setting down her tablet. "We didn't know you were coming." "We need to talk," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and cold. My father folded his newspaper carefully. "Of course, sweetheart. Sit down. Do you want some coffee?" I didn't sit. I stood there in their kitchen, This kitchen where I had eaten breakfast before school for 18 years, where I had baked cookies with my mother, where I had told them about my first job, my first apartment, my life. And I pulled out my phone and showed them the videos. "Have you seen these?" I asked. My mother glanced at the screen and looked away quickly. "Joan, honey, Derek told us about what happened at the party." "What he did to me, you mean?" I said. "What he did to humiliate me in front of everyone." My father sighed heavily. "Joan, you shouldn't have gone to that party. You weren't invited." I stared at him. "That's your response? That I shouldn't have gone?" "You put Derek in an awkward position," my mother said softly. "He had to address it somehow." "He called me garbage," I said, my voice rising now. "In front of 150 people. He recorded it and let people share it online." "And you're defending him?" My father set down his coffee cup slowly, deliberately. "Joan, sit down. Let's talk about this rationally." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to call Derek and tell him to apologize to me. I want you to tell him what he did was cruel and unacceptable. I want you to act like parents." My mother and father exchanged a look, the kind of look that married couples develop over decades, a whole conversation in a glance. My mother reached over and put her hand on my father's arm. "Sweetheart," my father said finally, "Derek showed us those videos. And honestly, you shouldn't have shown up uninvited. It was inappropriate." The words hung in the air between us. Inappropriate. Not Derek's public humiliation of his sister. My presence. "Are you serious right now?" I asked. My mother stood up and walked over to me. She tried to put her hand on my shoulder, but I stepped back. "Joan, you have to understand. The Harrisons are a very well-connected family. Stephanie's father knows senators. He donates to museums. Derek is trying to build a good life for himself, a secure future." "And what am I doing?" I asked. "What do you think I'm doing?" "You're working hard, we know that," my father said, his tone patronizing, like he was explaining something to a child. "But you have to be realistic about your station in life. Derek is marrying into wealth and influence. That comes with expectations. Station in life." The phrase made me want to scream. "I'm your daughter," I said quietly. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "Of course it does," my mother said quickly. "We love you, Joan. But we also love Derek, and we want his wedding to be perfect. Is that so wrong?" I looked at both of them. My mother in her reading glasses and cardigan. My father in his polo shirt and khakis. These ordinary people who had somehow decided that their son's social climbing was more important than their daughter's dignity. "I can't believe you," I whispered. I was about to turn and leave when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the kitchen window, I saw Derek's black BMW in the driveway. He was here. He walked in through the front door like he owned the place, calling out, "Mom? Dad? I brought those paint samples you wanted to see for the guest room." He rounded the corner into the kitchen and stopped when he saw me. For a second, just a second, something flickered in his eyes. But then his face hardened into that same cold expression from the country club. "Oh," he said flatly, "you're here." My parents' faces lit up when they saw him. My mother got up and kissed his cheek. My father smiled. "Derek, good to see you, son." Derek set down a bag of paint samples on the counter and turned to face me. "I hope you're not here causing trouble, Joan." "I'm here," I said slowly, "asking Mom and Dad to talk to you about what you did to me." He laughed. Actually laughed. "What I did to you? Joan, you crashed my engagement party. You showed up uninvited and tried to make it about yourself. That's what you always do." "That's not true," I started, but he cut me off. "You know what?" Derek said, crossing his arms. "Since you're here, there's actually something I wanted to discuss with you. Mom, Dad, and I have been talking." A cold dread settled in my stomach. "About what?" Derek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "About your contribution to the wedding." "My contribution?" "Well, you're not attending the wedding, obviously," he said. Walking over to the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of water like this was the most casual conversation in the world. "But you're still family, technically. And family helps family. So we decided that you should contribute $30,000 toward the wedding expenses." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It burst out of me, sharp and disbelieving. "You're joking." Derek's expression didn't change. "I'm not joking at all. The wedding is costing just under $200,000. $30,000 from you is reasonable. Mom and Dad are contributing $75,000. Stephanie's parents are covering the rest." I looked at my parents. "Tell me you're not serious about this." My mother was twisting her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit I knew well. "Joan, Honey, Derek's wedding is very expensive, and you don't have a wedding of your own to save for. You have that nice little apartment, and you work steady hours. $30,000 is not unreasonable. Not unreasonable? I repeated. You want me to give $30,000 to a wedding I'm not invited to attend? Consider it your way of participating, Derek said smoothly. Since you won't actually be there, this is how you can contribute to the family celebration. I felt like I was in an alternate reality. This is insane. You humiliated me publicly, excluded me from your life, and now you want me to pay you? It's not paying me, Derek said with exaggerated patience. It's contributing to a family event. You know, like a gift. A generous gift. I'll give you 2 weeks to come up with it, he continued, checking his watch. Just wire it to Mom's account. She'll make sure it gets allocated properly to the vendors. I looked at each of them. Derek, standing there in his designer jeans and expensive watch, acting like this was perfectly reasonable. My parents, not meeting my eyes, complicit in this absurdity. No, I said. Derek's jaw tightened. Excuse me? No. I'm not giving you $30,000. I'm not giving you anything. Joan, don't be selfish, my mother said, her voice taking on that disappointed tone I remembered from childhood. This is your brother's wedding, one of the most important days of his life. Then maybe he should have invited me, I shot back. Derek stepped closer to me. You know what your problem is, Joan? You're jealous. You're jealous that I'm successful, that I'm marrying someone beautiful and accomplished, that I'm moving up in the world while you're stuck serving peanuts in the sky. Get away from me, I said, my hands shaking now. 2 weeks, Derek repeated. $30,000. Or I'll make sure the whole family knows how selfish you really are. He grabbed his paint samples and walked out, calling over his shoulder. Thanks for the coffee, Mom. My mother walked him to the door. I heard them talking in low voices, heard my mother laugh at something he said. When she came back into the kitchen, my father had gone back to his crossword puzzle. I think you should go now, Joan, my mother said quietly. You're upsetting your father. I looked at my father, who was very intently focused on filling in boxes on his puzzle. He didn't look up. I left. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out of that house and I didn't look back. I drove home in a haze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got back to my apartment, I threw my keys on the counter and just stood there in my kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. $30,000. They wanted me to pay $30,000 for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. I needed to talk to someone. Someone outside my immediate family who would understand how insane this was. I picked up my phone and called Amy. Amy Patterson had been my best friend since 2nd grade. We had grown up 3 houses apart. We had shared secrets, clothes, and dreams. If anyone would understand, it would be Amy. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. Hello? Her voice was cool, distant. Amy, it's me, I said, sinking onto my couch. I need to talk to you about something. There was a long pause. I heard what you did, Joan. I froze. What I did? Derek called me. He told me everything. About how you've been sabotaging his wedding planning. How you showed up at the engagement party to cause a scene. How you've been sending threatening messages to Stephanie. My mouth fell open. What? Amy? None of that is true. None of it. He showed me screenshots, Amy said, her voice hard now. He shared them in the family group chat. What family group chat? I asked, my heart pounding. The Fletcher family chat. Everyone's in it. I'm not in any family group chat, I said slowly. Well, you were removed from it a few weeks ago, Amy said matter-of-factly. Derek said it was because you kept sending negative messages about Stephanie. Amy, I've never sent any messages about Stephanie. I barely know Stephanie. And what screenshots? Screenshots of what? Text messages where you called her terrible names. Where you told Derek he was making a mistake marrying her. Where you threatened to ruin the wedding. My hands were shaking. I never sent any of those messages. Amy, you've known me for 25 years. Do you really think I would do something like that? There was another pause. Longer this time. When Amy spoke again, her voice was quieter but no less cold. I saw the screenshots, Joan. I saw the timestamps. Your phone number was right there at the top. Then they're fake, I said desperately. Derek is lying. He's making this up to turn everyone against me. Why would he do that? Amy asked. What would he possibly gain from lying about his own sister? Because he doesn't want me at his wedding, and he's building a narrative to justify it, I said, my voice rising now. Amy, please. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. I thought I knew you, Amy said softly. But people change, Joan. Success changes people. Money changes people. And I guess when you saw Derek moving up in the world, you couldn't handle it. I don't have money, I started to say. But she cut me off. Look, I have to go. I just wanted you to know that what you're doing is really disappointing. Derek and Stephanie deserve to be happy. Just leave them alone and let them enjoy their wedding, okay? Amy, wait. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. Derek had created fake screenshots. He had told the entire family that I was sabotaging his wedding, threatening his fiancée. And they believed him. Over the next 3 days, my phone became a weapon of emotional warfare. Text after text came through from family members I hadn't heard from in months or even years. My Aunt Patricia. Joan, I'm shocked and disappointed. I thought you were better than this. My Uncle Carl, who had helped raise me after I had broken my arm in 6th grade, who had taught me how to change a tire, who had always called me his favorite niece, pathetic and jealous. That's what you've become. Your brother deserves better than this. Cousin after cousin weighed in. Cousin Mark said I was toxic. Cousin Diane said I was clearly unstable. Cousin Rachel, who had sent me the photo of the engagement party, who had apologized for not knowing I wasn't invited, now sent me a message saying, I can't believe I felt sorry for you. Derek was right about you all along. I tried to defend myself. I sent messages back explaining that the screenshots were fake, that Derek was lying, that I had never threatened anyone. But no one responded. Or worse, they told me I was making excuses and playing the victim. By the 3rd day, I had been blocked on social media by 11 family members. 11 people who had known me my entire life had decided I was guilty without even hearing my side. The only person who didn't block me was Uncle Carl, but only because he wanted to send me one final message. You're not welcome at family events anymore. Not Christmas, not Thanksgiving, nothing. Stay away from Derek's wedding, or I'll personally make sure you regret it. I read that message 3 times, each time feeling something inside me crack a little more. I was at work on a Thursday, flying the New York to Miami route, when everything finally became too much. I was working first class, going through my pre-flight checklist, smiling at passengers, stowing luggage, doing all the things I had done 1,000 times before. But I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. During the flight, when we had reached cruising altitude and most passengers were settled, I went to the galley in the back to prepare the beverage service. That's when I lost it. I stood there surrounded by carts and bottles and tiny packages of pretzels, and I started crying. Quietly at first, then harder, my shoulders shaking, tears streaming down my face. Excuse me, dear. I turned to see an older woman standing in the galley doorway. She was maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a cream-colored blazer. She had been sitting in seat 3 amperes. I'm so sorry, I managed, wiping at my face. I'll be right out with beverages. I'm not here about beverages, she said gently. I'm here because I saw you crying, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. Something about her kind voice, her genuine concern, broke down the last of my walls. I'm fine, I lied. Just a hard week. The woman, whose name I would later learn was Dorothy, stepped fully into the galley and closed the curtain behind her for privacy. Honey, I've had 7 hard weeks in my 72 years on this earth. I know what a hard week looks like. This looks like more than that. And maybe it was because she was a stranger, or maybe it was because I had no one else to talk to, but I found myself telling her a brief version of what had happened. Not all the details, just the outline. My brother's wedding. The exclusion. The humiliation. The family turning against me. Dorothy listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said something that would change everything. Honey, people who truly love you don't humiliate you. You understand that, right? Love doesn't tear you down to build someone else up. And blood relation doesn't equal family. Family is who shows up for you, who celebrates you, who protects you. I wiped my eyes. They're the only family I have. No, Dorothy said firmly. They're the only family you've known. There's a difference. You can choose your family, sweetheart. You can build a life surrounded by people who actually deserve you. Her words struck something deep inside me. I had spent my whole life trying to fit into a family that didn't want me unless I was convenient, unless I was small enough not to threaten their image of themselves. I finished that flight in a daze. When we landed in Miami, Dorothy stopped at the exit, pressed a business card into my hand, and said, "If you ever need someone to talk to, call me. And honey?" Stop making yourself smaller for people who should be lifting you up. That night, back in my apartment in New York, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and found my way into the family group chat. Cousin Rachel's husband, Brian, wasn't as tech-savvy as Derek, and I managed to get him to add me back, claiming I had been removed by accident. The chat was filled with messages about Derek's wedding. Everyone discussing what they were wearing, sharing pictures of gifts they had bought, talking about how excited they were. 347 messages, and not one person had mentioned me or wondered where I was. I typed out one message. You want me out of your life? Done. Don't contact me again. We have no relationship now. I hit send. Then I blocked every single family member's number. Everyone. Derek, my parents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. All of them. Then I called my lawyer. Paul, I said when he answered. It's Joan Fletcher. I need you to move forward with the expansion plan. All of it. I'm ready. Paul Davis had been my lawyer for 6 years, since the very beginning of my business. He had helped me set up the LLC, navigate the regulations, handle contracts. He knew about the expansion I had been planning. The one I had been putting off, because I was afraid. You're sure? He asked. I'm sure, I said. Let's buy those 3 jets. Let's grow this thing. I'm done waiting for permission from people who don't matter. What my family didn't know, what Derek had never bothered to ask about, was that for the past 6 years, I had been building something. Elite Air Charter. I owned 7 private jets. 7 beautiful, expensive aircraft that I leased out to corporations, celebrities, and wealthy families who needed private travel. I had started the company with an inheritance from my grandmother, my mother's mother, who had left her money specifically to me in her will. $200,000. She had left it to me because, as her will stated, Joan is the only one who never asked me for anything. I had taken that money, and I had built an empire. A small empire, yes, but an empire nonetheless. I still worked as a flight attendant because it kept me connected to the aviation industry, because I loved it, and because it gave me a steady income while I grew the business. But Elite Air Charter was profitable now. Very profitable. The company was worth approximately $12 million, and I was about to make it worth a lot more. I hung up with Paul and looked around my apartment. It was a nice apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine, paid for with my own money, decorated with my own taste. No one had given it to me. No one could take it away. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain. I felt determination. My family wanted nothing to do with me? Fine. I wanted nothing to do with them. They thought I was garbage? They would find out exactly how wrong they were, not because I needed to prove anything to them, but because I needed to prove something to myself. I was worth more than their approval. I always had been. 2 months passed. 2 months of silence from my family, which felt like both a relief and a wound. I threw myself into my work with an intensity I hadn't felt in years. The acquisition of the 3 additional jets went through smoothly. Elite Air Charter now owned 10 aircraft, ranging from small 6-passenger jets to a beautiful Gulfstream that could seat 16 in luxury. My days became a blur of logistics meetings, maintenance schedules, pilot hiring, and client consultations. Paul helped me bring on a business manager, a sharp woman named Claudia, who had 20 years of experience in private aviation. Together, we streamlined operations, expanded our client base, and increased our profit margins by 18%. I also started seeing someone. His name was Marcus Hayes, and I had met him through work. He was a commercial real estate developer who frequently chartered jets for site visits across the country. After the 4th or 5th flight he booked with Elite Air, he asked if I would have dinner with him. Not as a business meeting, he clarified, but as a date. Marcus was different from anyone I had ever dated. He was quiet where Derek was loud, thoughtful where my family was impulsive. He didn't need to announce his success to everyone in the room because his success spoke for itself. He wore simple, well-made clothes. He drove a normal car. He lived in a nice but not ostentatious apartment in Manhattan. Everything about him was understated. What I didn't know yet, what he hadn't told me, was exactly how successful he was. I knew he was comfortable, clearly. But Marcus was private about his finances, in a way I found refreshing after a lifetime of Derek, bragging about every promotion and every purchase. We had been dating for 6 weeks when everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, early February. I was at the hangar facility in Teterboro, New Jersey, where we kept most of our jets. I was walking the grounds with Claudia, discussing the maintenance schedule for one of our smaller aircraft, when I saw a black BMW pull up to the gate. My stomach dropped. I knew that car. Derek got out of the driver's side. My mother got out of the passenger side. My father climbed out of the back. "Who are they?" Claudia asked, noticing my expression. "My family," I said quietly. Claudia looked at me with concern. "Do you want me to call security?" "No," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Let them in. I'll handle this." The guard at the gate checked them in, and they walked across the tarmac toward where I stood. Behind me, 3 of our jets were visible, their white bodies gleaming in the winter sun, the Elite Air Charter logo painted in gold on each tail. Derek's face when he saw those planes was something I would remember for the rest of my life. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened slightly, and for just a second, he looked like he had been punched. When they got close enough, Derek's expression rearranged itself into a huge smile, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Joan!" he called out, arms spread wide like we were old friends. "There's our successful girl! Why didn't you tell us about your amazing business?" I stood perfectly still. "Derek," my mother was crying, actual tears streaming down her face. "Sweetheart, we had no idea you were doing so well. We're so proud of you." My father was looking around at the jets, the hangar facility, the crew members moving around in the background. I could see him doing calculations in his head, figuring out what all of this must be worth. Derek tried to hug me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. His arms dropped, but the smile stayed plastered on his face. "Joan, come on, don't be like that. We've just been worried about you, that's all. You disappeared for 2 months. We didn't know where you were, or what you were doing." "I told you not to contact me," I said evenly. "You're here because you found out about my business." My mother wiped at her eyes. "We found out by accident. Stephanie's father was trying to book private jets for their family to fly to the wedding, and his assistant mentioned your company. We couldn't believe it. Our little girl, a business owner." "How many jets do you have?" my father asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "That's none of your business," I said. "Joan," Derek said, his tone shifting to something softer, more pleading. "I know we've had our differences. I know things got heated. But we're family. Family is forever, right? We should be celebrating your success together." "You humiliated me in front of 150 people," I said calmly. "You called me garbage. You demanded I pay $30,000 for your wedding. You created fake text messages to turn the entire family against me. You made sure I knew I wasn't wanted. And now you show up here because you found out I have money, and suddenly you want to celebrate." Derek had the decency to look uncomfortable for about half a second before recovering. "I was wrong, okay? I admit it. I was stressed about the wedding, and I took it out on you. But I want to make it up to you." "How?" I asked. "You're invited to the wedding now," he said quickly. "Full invitation. +1. We'd love to have you there." I waited. There was more. I could see it in his eyes. "And," he continued, glancing at the jets behind me, "I was thinking, since you have this incredible resource, maybe Elite Air Charter could fly Stephanie's family to Napa Valley. You know, as a family gesture. We'd pay you, of course. A family discount. But we'd definitely pay you." There it was. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want me to come to your wedding, the wedding you very publicly banned me from, and you want me to provide my jets for Stephanie's family at a discount. It would mean so much to us," my mother chimed in. "And think of what a wonderful way to reconnect. You could show the family your incredible success. Everyone would be so impressed." I looked at the 3 of them standing there on my property. My property. These people who had told me I was worthless, who had said I didn't fit their image, who had demanded my money and my dignity. "No," I said. Derek's smile finally cracked. "What?" "No. You're not invited to use my business. You're not welcome here, and I'm not coming to your wedding. Now leave my property." Derek's face went from confused to angry in an instant. "Are you kidding me right now? You're really going to be this petty?" "Petty?" I repeated. "You think boundaries are petty?" "We raised you," my father said, his voice taking on that stern tone he had used when I was a child. "We put a roof over your head for 18 years. We fed you, clothed you, sent you to school. And this is how you repay us?" "You did the bare minimum that parents are legally required to do," I said. "That doesn't give you the right to treat me like garbage, and then expect me to hand you my success." My mother stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Joan, please, don't throw away your family over pride." "I'm not throwing away anything," I said. You already threw me away. 2 months ago. Remember? Derek was breathing heavily now, his face red. Fine. You want to play this way? Let me tell you something, Joan. This company, these jets, they were built with family money. Grandma's money. That was our inheritance, not just yours. I'll sue you for family abandonment. I'll take you to court, and I'll get half of everything you've built. I had been waiting for this. Paul had warned me that Derek might try this angle. Actually, came a voice from behind me. Paul had been standing near the hangar, and he walked over now, briefcase in hand. The will specifically designated that inheritance solely to Joan Fletcher. There is no legal basis for a lawsuit, and if you pursue one, we'll countersue for harassment and defamation, especially given the fake text messages you created and distributed. Derek's eyes widened. You can't prove those were fake. Actually, we can, Paul said calmly. Joan never sent those messages from her phone. We have her phone records. We also have testimony from the phone company that the timestamps on those screenshots don't match any outgoing messages from her number during that period. So if you'd like to continue this conversation in court, we're happy to oblige. The color drained from Derek's face. My father grabbed Derek's arm. Come on, son, let's go. But Derek wasn't done. He turned back to me, and all pretense of friendliness was gone. His voice was low and venomous. You'll regret this, Joan. I promise you that. You think you're so successful, so important? You're still the same pathetic girl you always were. These jets don't change that. This money doesn't change who you are. You're right, I said quietly. The money doesn't change who I am. It just made it very clear who you are. Derek opened his mouth to say something else, but my father pulled him away. My mother looked at me one more time, her expression a mix of disappointment and calculation, before following them back to the car. I watched them drive away, Claudia standing beside me. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. And surprisingly, I was. I'm okay. What I didn't see as they drove away was Derek pulling out his phone and making a call. What I didn't know was that he was calling a local news producer who owed him a favor. What I couldn't have anticipated was that Derek, unable to win legally, was about to try to destroy me publicly. 3 days after Derek showed up at my hangar, I received a certified letter at my office. A lawsuit. Derek Fletcher versus Joan Fletcher. The claim was for $6 million, half the estimated value of Elite Air Charter, based on the argument that the inheritance I had used to start the company was family funds that should have been shared equally among my mother's children. Paul had been right. Derek was actually doing this. It's a garbage lawsuit, Paul assured me on the phone. No judge is going to look at a will that explicitly names one person and decide the money should be split, but we do have to respond. We'll need to file a motion to dismiss, which will cost you about $15,000 in legal fees. $15,000 to defend against a lawsuit that should never have been filed in the first place. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. The lawsuit was just the beginning. The next blow came 5 days later, when my business phone started ringing off the hook. Not with bookings, with questions. Is it true your company was built on stolen money? Are you really refusing to help your disabled brother? Why won't you comment on the allegations? I had no idea what they were talking about until Claudia burst into my office holding her phone. You need to see this, she said, pulling up a video. It was a local news segment from a New York City station. The headline read, "Local woman builds $1 million business, won't help struggling family." The segment showed Derek sitting in an interview chair, looking earnest and wounded. Next to him sat my parents, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My sister and I were very close growing up, Derek said to the camera. But when she suddenly came into money, everything changed. She became cold, distant. She cut us out of her life completely. The interviewer, a young woman with perfect hair and a sympathetic expression, leaned forward. And you're dealing with some significant medical challenges yourself, is that correct? Derek nodded solemnly. I've been managing a chronic condition for the past year. Nothing life-threatening, but it requires ongoing treatment that's very expensive. We hoped Joan might help, given her success, but she refused. I paused the video. What chronic condition? Derek doesn't have a chronic condition. He's perfectly healthy. Claudia shook her head. Keep watching. The interview continued. My mother spoke next. We don't recognize our daughter anymore. The Joan we raised was kind and generous, but money changed her. She won't return our calls. She threatened us when we tried to visit her workplace. It's been devastating. The segment showed old photos of me as a child, smiling in family pictures. School photos. A photo of me at my high school graduation. The editing made it look like a memorial for someone who had died, not a profile of a successful business owner. Then the interviewer spoke directly to the camera. Joan Fletcher, the owner of Elite Air Charter, a private jet company estimated to be worth over $10 million, has refused to comment on her family's claims. We reached out to her business multiple times, but she has not returned our calls. The segment ended with a phone number displayed on screen, asking anyone with information about the case to contact the station. They never called us, I said, my voice hollow. We never received any request for comment. I know, Claudia said. I checked our call logs. They're lying. Within 6 hours, the segment had been picked up by 2 other local stations. Within 12 hours, it was on social media. Within 24 hours, it was semi-viral. Comments poured in. Rich people have no soul. How can she ignore her own family like that? I hope her business fails. Karma is real. She's probably a narcissist who can't stand to see others succeed. My business social media pages were flooded with 1-star reviews from people who had never used our services. Owner abandons family in need. Greedy and heartless. I'll never book with a company run by someone like this. Then the phone calls started. Not just questions from media outlets, but angry calls from strangers. You should be ashamed of yourself. Your poor brother deserves better. I hope you lose everything. Claudia hired a service to screen our calls, but the damage was spreading. 2 corporate clients who had been long-term customers called to cancel their contracts. Both cited the same reason. They didn't want to be associated with negative publicity. It's just too much drama, one CEO said apologetically. We have shareholders to answer to. Bad press is bad press. I was losing business, real money, because of Derek's lies. Paul sent a cease and desist letter to the news station, threatening to sue for defamation. They responded with their own lawyers, claiming everything in the segment was based on statements from my family, and therefore protected speech. We can sue Derek directly, Paul said. We can prove he lied about his medical condition. Prove that your grandmother's will was clear. Prove that you never threatened anyone. But a defamation lawsuit takes months, sometimes years. And in the meantime, this is all public. I sat in my office one night, alone, at midnight, scrolling through the hate messages. My phone was off, my email was off, but I couldn't stop reading what strangers thought of me. People who had never met me, who knew nothing about my life, had decided I was a villain. Someone had found Elite Air Charter's address and posted it online. We had to hire additional security because people were showing up to take photos, to yell at whoever came out of the building. I put my head down on my desk and let myself cry. Not the kind of crying I had done after Derek's engagement party, sharp and shocking. This was deeper, more exhausting. This was the crying of someone who had tried to do everything right and was being punished for it anyway. That's when my phone buzzed. I had turned off my business phone, but my personal phone was still on. A text from Marcus. I just landed. Coming over. Don't tell me no. Marcus had been traveling for work for the past week, dealing with a commercial development project in Dallas. I had told him bits and pieces of what was happening, but I had downplayed it. I didn't want him to think I was too much trouble, too much baggage. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my office door. Marcus stood there in jeans and a sweater, looking concerned and determined. I saw the news segment, he said without preamble. I saw what they're saying about you. And I need to tell you something. I wiped at my eyes, embarrassed that he was seeing me like this. Marcus, I'm fine. It's just been a rough week. Stop, he said, walking over and kneeling beside my chair so we were at eye level. Stop pretending you're fine when you're not. I know you, Joan. I know what you've been dealing with. And I can't stand back and watch you go through this alone anymore. You barely know me, I said, trying to smile. We've only been dating for 2 months. I know enough, he said. I know you're honest. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you care about people, even the ones who don't deserve it. And I know that everything your brother said on that news segment was garbage. Something in his certainty broke through my defenses. Thank you, I whispered. Marcus took my hands. Joan, I was going to wait. I had this whole plan. A trip to Paris in the spring, dinner on a boat on the Seine, the whole romantic thing. But I can't wait anymore. Not when I see you hurting like this. Not when I know what I want. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. My breath caught. Marcus. Do you love me? He asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Of course I do. Then marry me, Marcus said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. Simple and elegant. Right now. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. Let's get married, build our life together, and show the world who you really are. Not by defending yourself to tabloids or arguing with your family, but by living well, by being happy, by surrounding yourself with people who actually deserve you. Tears were streaming down my face now, but for a different reason. Are you serious? I've never been more serious about anything in my life, he said. Your family doesn't deserve you, Joan, but I want to be your family. I want to spend every day proving that you're loved, that you're valued, that you're everything they were too blind to see. Yes, I said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto my finger, and I kissed him, this man who had seen me at my lowest and hadn't run away. What I didn't know yet, what Marcus still hadn't told me, was that he was Marcus Hayes, son of Catherine and William Hayes, heirs to the Hayes Development Corporation, one of the largest commercial real estate empires in America. The Hayes family was worth approximately $800 million. They owned buildings in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and 15 other major cities. They had been featured in Forbes, in architectural magazines, in business journals. Marcus had kept this quiet on purpose. He had spent his whole life watching people change when they found out about his family's wealth, treating him differently, wanting things from him. With me, he had been just Marcus, a developer, a guy who liked aviation and good coffee and quiet evenings. But now, as he held me in my office at midnight, he knew it was time to tell me everything. Not because the wealth mattered to him, but because marrying me meant bringing me into his world, a world that was about to collide with mine in ways neither of us could predict. There's something I need to tell you, he said softly. Something I should have told you sooner. And he did. He told me about his family, about the business empire, about who he really was. He explained that he had kept it private because he wanted to be sure I loved him for himself, not for the Hayes name. When he finished, I looked at him, this man I had fallen in love with, and I laughed, actually laughed. What's funny? He asked, confused. Derek called me garbage, I said. And I'm about to marry into one of the wealthiest families in America. The universe has a sense of humor. Marcus smiled, that quiet smile I had come to love. The universe has excellent taste. Now, about this wedding. What do you say we make it count? Marcus's mother, Catherine Hayes, called me the next morning at 7 o'clock. I was still at my apartment, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, looking at the ring on my finger and wondering if the past 12 hours had actually happened. Joan, Catherine said warmly when I answered. Marcus just told me the wonderful news. Welcome to the family, darling. Now, I know this is quick, but I'd love to host an engagement party for you both. Would 2 weeks from Saturday work? 2 weeks. Most people planned engagement parties months in advance, but Catherine Hayes was not most people. That's very kind, I said, still processing everything. But you don't have to. Nonsense, Catherine interrupted gently. Marcus is my only son, and he's deliriously happy. That makes you family now, and the Hayes family celebrates. Besides, I've been waiting for this boy to settle down for 10 years. I'm not waiting another minute to properly welcome you. The engagement party was held at the Hayes family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. I had known Marcus's family had money, but I hadn't understood the scale until I drove up the tree-lined driveway and saw the house. It wasn't a house, it was a mansion. 23 rooms, 10 acres of grounds, a view of Long Island Sound. Catherine met me at the door with a hug that felt genuinely warm. You look beautiful, she said, taking in my navy cocktail dress. Come, let me show you around before the guests arrive. She walked me through rooms filled with art, antiques, and family photos. She introduced me to Marcus's father, William, a tall man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. She showed me the library where Marcus had learned to read, the piano room where he had taken lessons as a child, the garden where they had held his first birthday party. He talks about you constantly, Catherine said as we stood in the garden, watching the catering staff set up tables. I've never seen him this happy. The guest list for the party was 300 people. Business associates, family friends, politicians, a few celebrities I recognized from magazines. Everyone who was anyone in New York society seemed to be there. I stood next to Marcus in a receiving line for an hour, shaking hands, smiling, accepting congratulations from people I had just met. Many of them knew about Elite Air Charter. Joan Fletcher, one man said, a real estate mogul whose face I recognized from business journals. I've been trying to book your jets for months. You're always booked solid. We're expanding, I told him. If you call next week, we should have more availability. Marcus squeezed my hand. He was in his element here, comfortable with these people, in a way I was still learning. But he kept me close, kept introducing me not as his fiancée, but as Joan, the brilliant CEO who's revolutionizing private aviation. The party was covered by photographers from Town and Country magazine and the society pages of 3 major newspapers. At one point, Marcus and I were asked to pose for photos in front of one of the estate's fountain features. The photographer directed us, had us hold hands, had Marcus kiss my cheek. "These are going to be beautiful," the photographer said. "The magazine wants to do a full feature on the wedding when it happens. You two are exactly the kind of couple our readers love." After the party, when most of the guests had left and I was sitting with Catherine and Marcus on the estate's back terrace, Catherine broached an unexpected subject. "Joan, darling, one of my dearest friends produces a television show, Platinum Weddings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it." I was. It was a show on a major lifestyle network that featured ultra-luxury weddings, destination ceremonies, celebrity guests, million-dollar budgets. "She called me this evening," Catherine continued. "She saw the engagement photos and asked if you and Marcus might consider letting them feature your wedding on the show. Of course, it's entirely up to you both. Marcus has always valued his privacy, and I would never pressure you to do anything you're uncomfortable with." I looked at Marcus. "What do you think?" He shrugged. "I don't care about being on TV, but if you want to do it, I'm fine with it. Whatever makes you happy." I thought about Derek, about the news segment he had orchestrated, the lies he had told, the public humiliation he had put me through, about the story he had crafted where I was the villain and he was the victim. "Yes," I said. "Let's do it." Catherine smiled. "Wonderful. I'll let Diane know. She'll be thrilled." The engagement announcement went public the next week. It appeared in the Wall Street Journal's business section, in Town and Country's society pages, and in several online publications. Joan Fletcher, CEO of Elite Air Charter, and Marcus Hayes, Executive Vice President of Hayes Development Corporation, announced their engagement. The couple plans to wed this spring at the Hayes family estate in Connecticut. The photos from the engagement party ran with the announcement. Me in my cocktail dress, Marcus in his suit, both of us smiling in front of the fountain. Another photo showed us standing in front of one of my jets that had been brought to the estate for display purposes. The caption read, "Aviation entrepreneur Joan Fletcher and real estate heir Marcus Hayes announce engagement." My phone started ringing immediately. Business contacts, old friends I hadn't heard from in years, even a few journalists asking for interviews. But I wasn't thinking about any of them. I was thinking about one person, Derek. I imagined him seeing the announcement, opening the Wall Street Journal at breakfast, maybe, or scrolling through social media, seeing my name, seeing Marcus's name, doing the math. I didn't have to imagine for long. Claudia called me at noon. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Derek Fletcher just tried to book a consultation call with us. He didn't give his name initially, but when my assistant asked who was calling, he said he was your brother and that he needed to discuss a business matter urgently." "What did you say?" I told him we don't do business with him and hung up. But Joan, 3 other people have called this morning, all with the last name Fletcher. Your mother, someone named Carl, and a woman who identified herself as your Aunt Patricia. They had all seen it. And they were panicking. That evening, Paul called with his own update. The lawsuit has been dropped. Derek's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss their own case this afternoon. No explanation given. I wasn't surprised. Derek had filed the lawsuit when he thought I was just a small business owner he could intimidate. Now that he knew who I was marrying, now that he understood the kind of legal resources the Hayes family had access to, he was backing down. But the real explosion came 3 weeks later when the promotional materials for Platinum Weddings released their spring season lineup. The commercials started airing on a Tuesday evening. I was at Marcus's apartment, and we were cooking dinner together when his phone started buzzing with texts from friends. "Turn on Channel 12, one text read. Marcus grabbed the remote and switched to the Lifestyle Network. A commercial was playing, sweeping shots of beautiful weddings, elegant venues, celebrity guests. And then, our faces. Me in the sample wedding dress I had been fitted for, Marcus in a tuxedo, standing in front of the Hayes estate. A smooth voiceover announced, "This spring on Platinum Weddings, Aviation CEO Joan Fletcher marries real estate heir Marcus Hayes in the society event of the season. Witness a celebration of love, luxury, and family." Coming this May. The commercial showed more glimpses. My jets, the estate, Catherine and William looking proud. A shot of me laughing, looking genuinely happy. Marcus looked at me. You okay with this? I'm okay, I said. And I was. Better than okay. What I didn't see, couldn't have known, was that at that exact moment, Derek was sitting in the living room of the house he shared with Stephanie, watching the same commercial. They were supposed to be going over final details for their own wedding, which was scheduled for 3 weeks before mine. Stephanie told me later, much later, what happened next. Derek had dropped the champagne glass he was holding. It shattered on their hardwood floor, but he didn't move to clean it up. He just stared at the TV, as the commercial repeated. That's your sister? Stephanie had asked, incredulous. Your garbage collector sister is marrying Marcus Hayes? The Marcus Hayes? Hayes Development Marcus Hayes? Derek didn't answer. He was doing math in his head. His wedding had cost $197,000. A beautiful wedding by any standard, held at a vineyard in Napa Valley, with 200 guests and a celebrated chef doing the catering. But Joan's wedding was going to be televised, on a show that featured weddings that cost upwards of $1 million, at an estate that was probably worth $50 million, with a guest list that would include people Derek had only read about in magazines. His wedding, the one he had been planning for 18 months, the one he had excluded me from to maintain his perfect image, was going to look pathetic by comparison. And everyone would see. Everyone would know that the sister he had called garbage was marrying into one of the wealthiest families in America. Stephanie's father, Harold Harrison, called Derek that night. Derek told me later, in a moment of vulnerability that came too late to matter, what Harold had said. You told me your sister was nobody. You told me she was just a flight attendant with no prospects. Do you have any idea what kind of business opportunities we just lost? The Hayes family is one of the most connected families in American real estate. I've been trying to get a meeting with William Hayes for 5 years. 5 years. And your sister is marrying his son. His only son. And you made sure she hated you. You made sure she wanted nothing to do with this family. Do you understand what you've done? Derek understood. For the first time, he fully understood the magnitude of his mistake. I wasn't garbage. I had never been garbage. I had been smart enough, disciplined enough, and hard-working enough to build something real. And he had been too blind, too arrogant, and too cruel to see it. The next day, my old phone number, the one I had abandoned months ago, received 23 calls from Derek. All went to voicemail. He left messages, first angry, then pleading, then desperate. Joan, pick up. We need to talk. Joan, I made a mistake. Can we please just talk about this? Joan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please call me back. My parents called 30 times over 3 days. My mother left tearful voicemails. Sweetheart, please. We love you. We made mistakes, but we're family. Call me back. Please call me back. Uncle Carl called. The same uncle who had sent me that message about not being welcome at family events. His voicemail said, Joan, I was wrong. I was completely wrong about everything. Please give me a chance to apologize properly. Cousin after cousin reached out through various channels. Social media messages, emails to my business account, even letters sent to my office. Amy, my childhood best friend, sent a 5-page email detailing how sorry she was, how she should have believed me, how she missed me and wanted to fix things. Even Stephanie called. She left a voicemail inviting me to her wedding, saying how much it would mean to Derek if I would come, how they wanted to start fresh. They all wanted something now that I wasn't garbage, now that I was marrying Marcus Hayes, now that I was valuable to them. I didn't respond to any of them, not one. I was busy planning a wedding with a man who loved me, surrounded by his family who had welcomed me with open arms, building a life that had nothing to do with the people who had thrown me away. Derek's wedding took place on a Saturday in late April. It was beautiful, by all accounts. Stephanie wore a designer gown. The venue was stunning. The food was excellent. 200 people attended and had a lovely time. But 3 weeks later, my wedding aired on national television, and everything changed. The wedding took place on a perfect May afternoon at the Hayes estate in Connecticut. The weather cooperated in a way that felt almost magical. 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, a gentle breeze coming off the Sound. The estate had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, candles and glass hurricanes lining the paths, an orchestra setting up near the garden where the ceremony would take place. 400 guests attended, business leaders, politicians, a few actors and musicians who were friends of the Hayes family, but also people I cared about: Claudia and her husband, Paul and his wife, Dorothy, the woman from the airplane who had given me her business card and who had become an unexpected friend, my old mentor from my flight attendant days, Captain Sarah Brennan, who walked me down the aisle when I realized I didn't want my father doing it. I wanted someone who had actually believed in me. The ceremony itself was simple and heartfelt. Marcus and I had written our own vows. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at him and said the truest thing I knew. You saw me when I thought I was invisible. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. You asked me to build a life with you when I thought I had to earn love by being perfect. You showed me that family is not who you're born to, but who chooses you every single day. I promise to choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden, including mine. The reception was held in a massive tent that had been erected on the estate grounds. Dinner was prepared by a celebrated chef. A famous singer, a friend of Catherine's, performed during dessert. My 7 private jets, now 10, were displayed on the grounds as part of the decor, lit up beautifully as the sun set. The entire event was filmed by the Platinum Weddings crew, cameras discreetly capturing everything. At one point during the reception, the show's producer, Diane, asked to interview Marcus and me. We sat together on a love seat in the estate library while she asked us questions. Joan, you've built an incredibly successful business in a very competitive industry, Diane said. What's the key to your success? I thought about how to answer that. I built Elite Air Charter from nothing, with an inheritance my grandmother left specifically to me. She believed in me when others didn't. This business represents years of hard work and sacrifice, but it also represents something bigger. It represents the idea that your worth is not determined by other people's opinions. You determine your own worth. And Marcus, what is it about Joan that made you know she was the one? Marcus smiled at me before answering. Joan is the most genuine, hard-working person I've ever met. She values integrity above everything else. She's kind without being weak, successful without being arrogant, and she has this incredible strength that comes from knowing who she is. I'm the luckiest man alive. The interview would be part of the show, along with footage of the ceremony, the reception, and the celebration. The episode was scheduled to air 2 weeks after the actual wedding. Those 2 weeks were peaceful. Marcus and I went on a short honeymoon to the Caribbean, just 5 days because we both had work commitments. When we returned, I went back to running Elite Air Charter, and Marcus went back to his development projects. Life was good, normal, happy. And then the episode aired. It premiered on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock. 20 million people watched. 20 million. It was one of the highest-rated episodes in Platinum Weddings history. I didn't watch it when it aired. Marcus and I were actually on a flight that evening, heading to Boston for a business meeting. But my phone started buzzing around 8:30, and it didn't stop. Messages from business contacts. Just saw your wedding on TV. Congratulations. From college friends I hadn't heard from in years. You looked stunning. From clients. That was the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen. When we landed in Boston, and I finally turned on my phone properly, I had 117 messages, 63 emails, and 14 voicemails. But it was Claudia's text that caught my attention. Derek has been calling the office all evening. He's frantic. Says it's an emergency. I'm not giving him your number, but I thought you should know. I called Claudia back immediately. What did he say? Just that he needed to talk to you urgently. He called 9 times in 2 hours. I finally told him if he called again, we'd get a restraining order. What I didn't know until later was what had actually happened at Derek's house that evening. Derek and Stephanie had sat down to watch my wedding, along with my parents, who had driven down to be with them. None of them had been invited to my wedding, obviously, but they all wanted to see it. The episode started with sweeping shots of the Hayes estate, the narrator explaining that this was one of the most prestigious properties in Connecticut. Then it showed Marcus's parents, their business empire, their philanthropic work. Then it got to me. Joan Fletcher, CEO of Elite Air Charter, a private aviation company currently valued at $12 million and growing. Joan started her company 6 years ago with an inheritance from her grandmother and built it into one of the most respected boutique aviation services on the East Coast. The show included footage of my jets, interviews with satisfied clients, and a segment about my journey from flight attendant to business owner. Joan represents a new generation of entrepreneurs, the narrator said. Self-made, determined, and unwilling to let anyone else define her success. Then came the ceremony. Me walking down the aisle with Captain Brennan, Marcus waiting for me, his face full of love, our vows, the kiss, the celebration. The reception footage showed the famous singer performing, showed 400 guests dancing and laughing, showed the beautiful details of every aspect of the night. And then came the interview segment. Me talking about my grandmother's belief in me, about hard work and sacrifice, about determining your own worth. Marcus saying I valued integrity above everything. The episode ended with footage of Marcus and me dancing, the narrator saying, Joan and Marcus Hayes represent the best of what love and success can look like when two people choose each other fully and completely. According to Stephanie, who told me this much later when she reached out to apologize for real, Derek sat frozen through the entire episode. He didn't speak, didn't move. When it ended, he just stared at the TV screen. My father was the first to speak. That's some estate. My mother was crying. She looked so beautiful, so happy. Derek's phone started ringing. Friends who had watched the episode, extended family members, business associates, everyone had seen it. Everyone now knew that Derek's garbage collector's sister had married into one of the wealthiest families in America and had been featured on national television in what was clearly $1 million wedding. Harold Harrison called Derek at 9:30. He didn't say hello. He just said, I want you to fix this. I don't care how you do it, but you will fix your relationship with your sister. Hayes Development is about to break ground on a $2 billion project in Manhattan, and I need to be in that conversation. Your sister is your way in. Fix this. Derek tried calling me that night. When that didn't work, he tried my old email. When that didn't work, he tried going through Claudia, then through Paul, then through every avenue he could think of. Over the next 3 days, my new phone number, which only a handful of people had, received over 100 calls from various Fletcher family members. Somehow they had tracked it down. Derek called 23 times. My mother called 32 times. My father called 18 times. Uncle Carl called 8 times. Aunt Patricia called 7 times. Cousins I barely knew called. Extended family members I hadn't seen since childhood called. Everyone wanted to talk to me. Everyone wanted to apologize. Everyone wanted back in. The voicemails were desperate. Derek, Joan, please. I know I messed up. I know I was horrible to you. But I'm your brother. Can we please talk? Please. My mother. Sweetheart, we made terrible mistakes. We were wrong about everything. You have to understand, we didn't know. We didn't understand. Please, baby, call me back. Uncle Carl. Joan, you were right and I was wrong. I said terrible things to you, and I regret them more than you'll ever know. Please give me a chance to make this right. Amy sent another email, this one 10 pages long, detailing every moment of our friendship, every memory we shared, begging me to forgive her and let her back into my life. Even some of Derek's friends reached out, people who had been at the engagement party, people who had laughed when he humiliated me, now sending apologies and asking if we could start over. I listened to a few of the voicemails one evening. Marcus sat beside me on our couch in our new apartment, the apartment we had moved into together, the place we were building our life. What do you want to do? He asked gently. I looked at him, this man who had seen me at my lowest and stayed, who had proposed to me in my office at midnight when I was crying, who had believed in me when no one else did. I don't feel angry anymore, I said slowly, surprised by my own words. I thought I would. I thought when they finally realized what they had lost, I would feel vindicated or satisfied or something. But I just feel nothing, maybe a little sad for them, but mostly nothing. That's healthy, Marcus said. That's what healing looks like. I don't think I can have them back in my life, I continued. Not really. Trust is like glass. Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but it's never the same. It's weaker. It shows the cracks. And I don't want to spend my life walking on eggshells, wondering when they'll decide I'm not valuable enough again. Marcus nodded. Whatever you decide, I support you completely. But Joan, you don't owe them anything. You've built a beautiful life. You have people who love you for real. That's enough. I thought about that. About Catherine and William, who had welcomed me as a daughter without hesitation. About Claudia and Paul and Dorothy and Captain Brennan. About Marcus, obviously. About the life we were building, the family we were creating. I think I need to respond, I said. Just once. So they know this isn't uncertainty, or me being too busy to get back to them. They need to know this is a choice, a boundary. That night, I composed one email. I sent it to the family group chat that somehow I had been added back to. Every family member who had reached out, plus all the others, would see it. I wrote, I received your calls and messages. I want you to understand something clearly. When Derek called me garbage, when you demanded I pay for his wedding while excluding me from it, when you sued me and tried to destroy my reputation, when you believed lies about me without even asking for my side, you showed me exactly who you are. I didn't change when I became successful. You changed the moment you thought I had nothing to offer you. The money didn't change me. Your reaction to it revealed your true values. I've built a beautiful life with people who love me for who I am, not what I can give them. I forgive you for what you did, but I don't trust you anymore. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. You destroyed it thoroughly. I'm moving forward with my chosen family, the people who show up for me on ordinary days, not just when it's convenient or beneficial. I wish you well in your lives, but from a distance. This isn't anger. This is a boundary. Please respect it, and don't contact me again. Joan. I hit send. Then I blocked every single number that had called me, every email address, every social media account. The next week brought unexpected vindication from an outside source. A journalist named Patricia Wu, from a respected online news magazine, had been investigating Derek's claims from the original news segment. She had tracked down medical records, interviewed neighbors, spoken with former colleagues. She discovered that Derek had no chronic medical condition, that the screenshots he had shared were fabricated, that every claim he had made was a lie. Her article, titled The Real Story Behind the Society Wedding, How Family Greed Nearly Destroyed an Aviation CEO, went viral. It included interviews with people I had worked with, clients who praised my business ethics, and a detailed breakdown of how Derek had attempted to manipulate public opinion for financial gain. Derek's reputation in his professional circle took a serious hit. Several of his business contacts distanced themselves from him. Stephanie's father was furious, though whether that fury led to any real consequences, I never knew and didn't care to find out. I heard through indirect channels that Stephanie had considered calling off the wedding but ultimately went through with it. Whether they were happy, whether they stayed together, whether Derek ever learned anything from what happened, I had no idea. It wasn't my story anymore. 6 months after my wedding, Marcus and I were on our honeymoon, a real one this time. We had taken 2 weeks to go to Italy, something we had been planning since the wedding but had been too busy to do right away. We were sitting on a terrace in Tuscany, drinking wine, and watching the sunset over rolling hills covered in vineyards. It was the kind of moment that felt almost too perfect to be real. Do you ever think about them? Marcus asked gently. Your family? I considered the question honestly. Sometimes. Mostly I think about the family I thought I had versus the family they actually were. I grew up believing family meant unconditional love, unwavering support, people who would catch you when you fell. But that's not what I had. What I had was conditional acceptance, based on whether I made them look good. And now? Marcus prompted. Now I know better, I said, reaching for his hand. Now I know that real family is who shows up, who celebrates your success instead of resenting it, who defends you when you're not in the room, who loves you on your worst days, not just your best ones. You found that, Marcus said, squeezing my hand. I built it, I corrected gently. With your family, with my friends, with people who earned the title. That's the thing I learned through all of this. You don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from people you're related to. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. Marcus pulled me closer. I'm proud of you. I hope you know that. I do, I said. But more importantly, I'm proud of me. That night, lying in bed in our hotel room, I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, but also the growth, the love, the success. I thought about the girl I had been a year ago, standing in her parents' kitchen, begging them to defend her. And I thought about the woman I was now, confident in her choices, surrounded by real love, building a life on her own terms. I didn't wish ill on Derek or my parents. I didn't spend energy hoping they would suffer or learn or change. They were living their lives, and I was living mine, and those lives no longer intersected. That was okay. That was healthy. That was freedom. The greatest success wasn't the business, or the money, or the televised wedding. It was learning to walk away from people who diminish you. It was understanding that your value is inherent, not assigned by others. It was discovering that the bravest thing you can do is let go of people who were supposed to love you and build a family that actually does. I used to collect trash on airplanes. Now I own the planes. But the real treasure was learning I was never trash to begin with. I just needed to stop letting people convince me I was. Compassion doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. You can forgive people and still maintain boundaries. You can wish someone well and still refuse to let them back into your life. The door isn't locked forever, but trust, once shattered, takes years to rebuild. And that's okay. You don't owe anyone access to you just because you share DNA. In the end, I learned that family is not about blood. It's about who waters your roots, who celebrates your blooms, and who stands beside you through every season. I found my family, and I chose them as carefully as they chose me. That's the kind of success money can't buy. That's the kind of happiness no one can take away. And that's worth more than any family approval could ever be. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever had to choose yourself over family expectations? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in difficult times. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. And remember, you're not alone in your struggles. Sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brought you comfort, strength, or maybe just the reminder that you deserve to be valued. Take care of yourselves, and remember, your worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion. You determine your own worth. Until next time.